Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Boris FX. Thank you so much for joining us today for our live webinar. We are excited to show you the brand new, completely revamped particleIllusion. You'll be getting an introductory look from Alan Lorence, who's the original creator, and along with him is Peter McCulley, who's the Senior Product Manager for Continuum. particleIllusion, in case people don't know, is available two ways. It's included inside Continuum 2019. Subscriptions start at $195, new licenses start at $695, and upgrade options from previous versions of Continuum are $195. particleIllusion is also included inside the individual Continuum particles unit. A new license of that is $399. You can upgrade from the previous particle unit for $99. And if you own a previous copy of particleIllusion 3, there's an upgrade path for that as well, and that's only $195. particleIllusion is the only particle plugin that supports multiple hosts. It's available for Adobe After Effects and Premiere Pro, Avid Media Composer, Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, and Magix Vegas Pro. Today, we'll be covering tons of topics, including how to quickly add simple text treatment to your project. Alan will go over the basic parameters of particleIllusion and what they do. We'll also go into a deep dive of the preset library and how you define the best emitters. We'll also be covering the new Mocha tracking and masking. And then we'll be featuring a few advanced motion graphics examples. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please use the questions panel on the interface and we'll answer them as soon as we can. If you stay till the end, you can win big. We have 5 $200 gift certificates to Action VFX. You can also win a 1-year subscription to Continuum, Sapphire, and Mocha. To thank you for attending the webinar today, we're offering 10% off any individual product on the Boris FX website. The coupon code is WebFeb19, and offer expires on February 28th. And finally, if you want to join our community, we're available on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Okay, Alan, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, hold on just one second.
All right. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Thanks, Jesse, for the intro. Again, I'm going to be showing you particleIllusion, which you may or may not know has been around for quite a long time, but has been fully revamped and rewritten and is now part of Continuum 2019. So as Jesse pointed out in the intro, it's available for multiple hosts. I'm going to jump in, do a couple things. First of all, I'm going to jump in and just do a quick, just a real quick example of what particleIllusion can do with how little effort. I'm going to cover a lot of stuff quickly here, but we're going to come back and cover a lot of it in detail. So don't panic if this kind of overwhelms you right away. But I've got a little text to start with here, just some text that grows up and shrinks back a little bit, and I want to add something special to that using particles. So I'm going to go ahead and apply particleIllusion, and it's in the BCC Particles menu, particleIllusion. Now, particleIllusion has a lot of parameters and controls, and it's just not possible to show them all here in the host. So it all happens in it's got its own custom UI. And so to get to that, you just click the Launch particleIllusion button. And if all goes well here, you will have the interface show up. And if you've used particleIllusion 3 in the past, a lot of this might be familiar to you, but it's all got a brand new look and everything else. So over here, we've got a live preview window that is showing an emitter that's from one of the libraries. There are over 2,500 emitters available that come with Continuum. And if you've got the demo or you've got Continuum already, you might only see this sampler library and all these other ones are missing, and you might wonder, how come you only have the one? Go up to the help menu and click download emitters. That'll get you to the installer that will give you all these extra emitters. They all come with the product. It's just that they're not all installed at the beginning. So the idea is particleIllusion is a preset driven particle system, and in order for that to work, that means that you have to have a large number of presets to start with. And like I said, we've got over 2,500. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into this a little bit later and show you, how to find the best type of things, best type of effects you're looking for, or the wide variety of things that are available as well. But first, I want to go ahead and add something to this. And I think I want something that kind of, something that explodes with color and just kind of excitement at about the same point that the text gets large. So I think right about that point, I know what I'm looking for, and it's cheating because I know the name of it, but I'm just going to start typing to show that this is the effect that I'm looking for. Sort of a colorful explosion burst and then a lot of sparkles that come out of it, kind of confetti-like. And so that's exactly what I want to use. So I'm going to add that just by clicking in the stage here. First of all, we can see that it's pretty small. So I'm going to just zoom that up a little bit. And again, like, don't worry about what I'm doing over here in the parameters, because I will explain all of this a little bit later. So we will go ahead now and make this a little bit, cover a wider area. And then I'm going to crank up the number of particles in there as well. And that might do it for me. Actually, the size is a little bit low. And I'm just going to apply that. I'm showing this in After Effects right now, but of course this will be the same. On the host side, it'll look a little different, but all the controls will be the same. And then the particleIllusion interface is identical on all the hosts because that's a custom UI. But in this case, I seem to have applied this to the wrong layer. So let me go ahead and take it off that layer. And I'm going to just put on a layer below because that's more the look I was going for. So if I go ahead and hit this, you'll see my big explosion of particles, and I could probably tweak this a little bit. It's not maybe exactly what I'm looking for, but I just wanted to show you quickly what types of effects you can get with very little work. So that was just a really brief introduction. I want to move on to explaining some of this, so I'm not going to dwell on this. So let's look more in depth at what is going on with particleIllusion. So I've just got a very simple effect here that I've pre-applied just to show you the basics. We're going to ignore the window over here and just look at the stage over here. And I'm actually zoom in a little bit for you. So if you've not seen particleIllusion before, the parameter window here, the controls window, has got all of the parameters that you can control. And they're, for the most part, pretty straightforward. There's the number of particles, the size, the velocity, how quickly they move, spin, weight, etc. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to show you a little bit what each of these means if you've never seen particles before. Velocity is just how quickly they move. So as I increase that, you can see the particles move a lot more. Size, same thing. The particles are larger or smaller. I'll get into some of the color options and things in a little while, but you can also adjust the opacity and everything else here. This, with being a very simple example, it just has a single type of particle that it creates. And you can see that here, and that there's only one particle type down here. When I spin that open, you can see the same parameters that you see on top with the same names. That might be confusing at first. Why is there two different places for that? I think the next example I show you will clarify that better. But in this case, think of this upper level as just a scaling factor that's applied to the particles settings down here. And so in this case, I could have adjusted size by changing it down here, or up here it's the same example. Sorry, the same exact effect. But the thing that you'll notice down here in the particle level is that there are variation and then also over life. So not only is there is size variation, and this might be intuitive. What this means is if this is non-zero, it just means that I'm applying this variation to the size so that some particles are smaller, some are larger. Same thing with velocity. If I increase the variation, some particles will be moving faster than others, and so on and so forth. It's just a way to get some variety and really a more pleasing look out of most effects. If everything's doing exactly the same thing, sometimes that's exactly what you want, but oftentimes it just does not look realistic or just not look pleasing enough. So the variation really helps with that. And I'm going to undo that just to get these back to a simple state here. And then we look at the overlife graphs. Before I jump into that, I should point out that this graph window is where keyframes are displayed, and you'll see that the horizontal axis here is the frame number. So as I jump forward, you can see what's going on. And if I had animation, you would be able to see that, let's say, the size would change over time here for the particles that are created. But what this doesn't show you in this graph over here is what each particle is doing over its own life. And that's what the overlife graphs do. And if I select one of those, you can see, first of all, that the horizontal axis here changed. No longer are we going for frame numbers. We're going from 0 to 1.0, which is the life of the particle in percentage. This means that at the left here is the particle at its birth, and then at the end is when the particle dies. And it doesn't matter how long that takes. If it's 10 frames or 100 frames or 1,000, it doesn't matter. What this graph tells me is that the particle is going to start fairly large at the beginning. It's going to slowly decrease over time, and then when it's about 70% through its life, it's going to decrease more quickly and then drop off to 0 at the time it dies. And you can see how that's happening here. The particles that are here that they're dying are pretty much down to tiny dots that you almost can't see anymore, and that's what's happening here. Same thing for velocity. In this case, the velocity starts high and then goes down. At the end of the particle's life, it's no longer moving, and you can actually see that as it goes. The particles are stopping as they go. And if I take away this endpoint here, you can see the particles keep moving their entire life. It's not so clear in this example, but it's really an important feature for other effects. I think the rest of these are pretty self-explanatory too, that you can change the spin and weight over life, things like that. Those are more advanced options, but those are the basics of what the parameters are. And it doesn't matter how complex the effect is. I want to show you another example here of something that's just a little bit more complicated. So here we've got a effect that's got sparks and smoke and fire and everything else. If I add this, first thing I'm going to do is zoom it up a little bit. I'm going to get rid of my other example. So in this case, you can see, even though it's a single emitter, it's made up of 5 different parts. So we've got glowing smoke, we've got the regular smoke, we've got the sparks and the intense center. So the artist that created this, put a lot of effort into making each of those pieces. When you open each of these up, you can see that they're all just duplicates of what we saw in that simple example before. Every single one of these has the exact same controls. So they all have size, they all have number, all have velocity. So in this case, you can see why an upper level sort of scaling factor is important. So if I want to make all of these particles, let's say, bigger, I would use the uppermost one and scale them all up so everything gets bigger. If I wanted instead just to see the sparks get bigger only, I would change it at this level. So that's probably not a great visual example, but let's say I wanted to have those sparks move faster. I can increase it down there, and you can see how this hierarchy kind of works now. It looks like it's, when you spin it all open, it looks like there's a lot going on here, but it's really just repeated parameters for each little particle type that there is there. Okay, so I wanted to show, oh yeah, this is a great example of some of the effects have this MB in their name. That's because they were designed to be used with motion blur. And if we look at the stage menu, we have a motion blur toggle here. If I toggle it on, you can see now we have motion blur built in the particle illusion. And this works on all hosts, even if your host doesn't have any sort of motion blur settings. So this is just built into particle illusion. You can see how it adds a bit of realism to this. Not ideal for every effect, which is why you'll often see, if you see MB in the name, it really was designed to be used with motion blur. If you don't see MB, it can go either way. It can either be used with motion blur or not, depends on how you like it. Again, just the guidance there. So that's an example of the parameters and what's going on. Let's look a little more closely at something I haven't looked at yet, and that's these properties. You can see this at the top level for the emitter. You can see it for each of the particle types as well. I'm going to look at the top level. You may have seen me in the magic example change this from point. This is the shape of the emitter. I can go to line, ellipse, area, circle. So for instance, if I made this a line, I would be in line mode here, and now I'm creating a line emitter where particles are emitted all along the line. Crank down the number a little bit and you can see what's going on here. Same thing with circle and area. I'm going to go ahead and just return it to a point. Whoops. There we go. And look at the properties. Oh, let's see. I skipped over a couple of things. We've got preload frames. This is important if at the beginning of your scene or your project, you want the particles to be already present and pre-born. In this example, the particles don't start until the emitter has been running for a little while. If I set frames to preload up a bit, it's the emitter will be running from the beginning. So that's what that is. You don't want to just set that to an arbitrarily high value because that's going to create a performance issue, but you can use that where you need it. It's also possible to draw particles either unordered or in the oldest particles in back or the oldest in front. And in some examples, in some emitters, that's important, but for the most part, that's not that important. Probably just want to leave that where it is. You've got a tint color, so I can overall use the tint strength to tint that emitter. Sometimes that's a great way to make it fit in your project a little bit nicer without having to go in and dig down into each one of these pieces and figure out where the color controls are. So that's the tint color. It's up at the top level with all the rest of the emitter properties. I'm going to undo that just to get it back to my original colors. And now we can start taking a look at maybe the particle properties as well. You've got the ability to flip the sprite image, which is not that important at this stage. This intense checkbox is important, though. I'm going to go ahead and look at this intense center. If I uncheck the intense option, so take a look over here and see what happens if I take that off. Those particles no longer become additive. They are just drawn with straight compositing, and it's doesn't give you that sort of intense, fiery look that we want. So that's why we've got that intense option there. Most of the glowing, sparkly things use that intense option. Single particle is a way to, rather than emitting many particles, you can click single particle and, for instance, make a particle that's a glow, or if you, let's say you had a, I don't know, some specific graphic image that you wanted just a single copy of, a single particle would be the way to go. Attached to emitter, that's a little more advanced. We don't need to worry about that. But if we look at the behavior, you can see that the particles can be random. They can be aligned to their motion. You can specify the angle. Colors is probably the most important of these properties. And here you can see that this is the intense center. It's using the full gradient. We can also set it to use random gradients or a few other options here that I won't get into. But you can see the gradient here, and you click on it to edit it if you want to. Same thing for the alpha. You can see that the particles here are starting out fully opaque and then getting transparent over their life. And you also have other options here with full gradient, alpha, and so on. So, and again, I'm not going to get into those here. It's a little bit more advanced stuff. I just want to let you know that where those are available. Since particleIllusion is a sprite-based particle system, it's image-based, all of the particles use images. There's no way not to have an image on a particle. And so in this release, which is the new 12.01 release, there is no way to edit that sprite or to change it. That's kind of that's a feature that's coming in an update later on, but at this point that is not possible. So that's the only thing about the emitters you can't change. You can't change the images that are being used right now. I just wanted to point that out. Great, so that is a look at all the parameters there. I hope I didn't cover that too quickly. The important thing to remember is that even though it looks like there's quite a bit going on, and if I spin these all open, you'll see just how many parameters there are. It's just repeated versions of the same things. and then with variation and overlay. So it's really just a few key parameters that you have to understand, and then the rest kind of all falls into place. And I think, Peter, we doing okay? Any questions coming up that you need me to answer? I don't think so. I don't see anything.
Oh, okay.
urgent.
Oh, sorry. My mic was muted there. Hey, here's something. Maybe you could answer. Let's see. I got a bunch of questions, but Mick O'Malley had a good one that I thought you could show quickly and easily. How about Bezier controls over keyframes in the graph editor?
Yep, that's a great idea. I'll go ahead and look at that real quick here. So I haven't talked of anything about editing or animation or anything. I can do that real quickly. Just using this simple example. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and zoom down a little bit. Any of these properties, so anything that's animated that has keyframes in it will show up with red square around the value. So you know right away that none of these other parameters are animated, just the ones that with the red square. So if I look, for instance, at velocity, it's a constant value the whole time. You know, nothing's animated. But if I look at size over life, things like that, you can see, yes, it's got some keyframes. And in this, anything that's showing in the graph window, I can go ahead and just modify those keys here. That's one way to go ahead and make changes. The other way is to go ahead and use the keyframe navigation controls here and jump to the next keyframe if there's one available, or the previous one. And this is where also you would change it from being a linear or Bezier curve. For instance, if I set linear, now the handles go away. And I think it's pretty standard. You can, let's see, Alt-click to disconnect if you need to. There was another one. Okay, I can't remember the. It's pretty much the standard way that your hosts work with Bezier curves. We tried to duplicate that so it's comfortable for you. Another way you can create a key, like right now, I can't just click to add a key if I wanted to, but I can position this marker, and then I can either just, if the graph already has data keys in it, I can just change the value and it will create a new key for me. I can also, if it doesn't have any data keys already and I need to add a few, I can go ahead and use the add keyframe button here, and that works in any of these. So if, let's say I was even in something that's not animated yet, let's say for some reason I had a shot where I wanted the zoom level to animate over time. So maybe this starts out very low, like it's in the distance, and then as my shot changes, it zooms in. I'm going to go ahead and I can go ahead and create a keyframe here, and then move forward and create another one, and then just change the value, or like I said, drag it in this window. But now as I go over time, you can see that changes. You can see the value update. You can see that the value now is outlined in red to show me that is a value that is being animated. And in this example, that's not important, but if you start looking at something like some of the complex explosions, it's sometimes a challenge to know which parameters are changing over time, and having this red highlight is just really great to help you figure out what's going on. So the one difference that the graph window doesn't really show you the values and the keyframes is for position. So if I want to animate this position of this emitter, right now you can see there's nothing down here. There's not even a dotted line, so I can't change this. Well, I can change it to linear, but you don't see anything happening here, so it might be confusing what's going on. That's because all the position data it just happens in this stage. So if I want to animate this, a couple things I can do. I can go ahead and turn on keyframing and then jump around in time, and then just drag the emitter so that it updates position. I'm actually going to turn off my motion blur just to make things a little snappier here. Oops. Or again, I can, once I've got some animation happening, once I start moving, now it automatically starts updating. I can, again, use the previous and next keyframe controls here, which for some reason is not working right there. Oh, I know, it's because I didn't have it highlighted. And change it to Bezier, and then start animating this way. So that's a kind of a brief look at how you animate the parameters. And then after I hit apply, and this goes back to the host, all that animation data is stored internally. You can't access that back in the host. So if I hit apply now, because none of those parameters are exposed, that's all internal to particleIllusion. So if you need to make changes to that, you've got to go back into particleIllusion. There's no keyframes that show up in the host right here for that aspect of it. I'm not sure if I actually just clicked that. Nope, I didn't. Okay, so I'm going to let's talk a little bit about the Emitter Library and how do you find something when you have a specific need in mind. And this is not a motion graphics example, and I apologize, I couldn't find motion graphics example that was as I guess easy to work with as this one. So I've just got just a little bit of a river scene. There's a little bit of snowflakes falling, but I really want to, let's say I wanted to add a lot more snow to this. That seems like a perfect use for particleIllusion. So I've got particleIllusion applied, launch the UI. And again, there are thousands of emitters here. The sampler library has about 75 emitters that cover just a wide range of things. I tried to work up a little script of how I could talk about these, but it's really hard to describe in words all the different things that you can do with particleIllusion. And every one of these presets is available for you. So some of them you'll find are going to be not applicable to the type of work you do, but some of these might be, very useful to some of the things that you're doing, and there is so much in here. I can't stress enough how much this particleIllusion can do. We tried to organize the emitter libraries that have been available over the years, and again, particleIllusion was originally released back around 2000 and was developed for several years, and we released emitter libraries every month for it for free. So the library is quite extensive. The thing is, if you're familiar with particleIllusion back then, finding things was always a challenge because we didn't have anything organized. Things came out every month, and it was just hard to find. So what we've done now is we've reorganized those emitters and took out a bunch of the older ones that I thought were not as useful, and then reorganize them into themed libraries. So you'll see the cartoon stuff, the explosions, fireworks and things. So this might be one way you might want to browse in. So if you're looking for, let's say you wanted some sort of pyrotechnics, going into the explosions library might be the way you want to start. For me though, if I don't really have an idea for what I'm looking for, and I can just have kind of a general idea, without knowing specifically. So let's say if I knew I was looking for something that was smoke, I could use the search box. And now instead of going to, let's say, the smoke library, which I may not have even known was there, typing smoke will give me a lot of the emitters that have smoke in their name or in the smoke library or in a folder called smoke. So you'll see a lot of these cartoon smokes would not be in the smoke library, so I might have missed some of these things if I was looking for them. I say the search is not perfect, but it is amazingly helpful when you're finding effects. And if anybody anybody's using who has used particleIllusion 3, and it sounds like some people who are watching this right now are familiar with it. The restriction that particleIllusion 3 had was you could only load one library at a time. Well, here every library is available to you at all times, so it really makes finding things incredibly simple, and I think you'll be really pleased with how what we've done with this. I love sparkle effects, and sparkle, kind of a pixie dust type effect, and particleIllusion has so many of these. They might not always be called sparkles, so you might have to get creative with some of your searches. So you might want to say instead pixie, or you might want to say magic, or something along those lines. Whoops. If I could type. So the search is definitely not going to be all-inclusive, but it's going to really help you dig down and find some things that are pretty interesting. I don't know if I should go through this too much. I really think you should download the demo and take a look at some of the things that are in here. I'm just playing around in this window, even if you don't have a specific project for particles in mind right now. Just playing around in this window and seeing some of the things that particleIllusion will do is pretty much fun. But in this case, I'm looking for, if I can get back on track here, I distracted myself with the fun stuff. I'm looking for snow. So I'm just going to start with snow. So there's some more I don't want to say cartoony type things. I'm looking for something that looks a little more natural and realistic. So snowstorm of some sort. Probably want to see some motion blur on these. Something like that might be good. Or maybe even just this. It's a real basic falling snow. This one's not too complicated. There are lots of snows that are more complex. They have different motion, but this one's very straightforward. I might start with this. And the way I would use this is just apply, click to apply. I can see the angles were a little weird. I can adjust that back to 0. I crank this number down. It's too many right now. I can go ahead and increase that area and then move this up. And like this is a starting point for me. Like I can tell you that this is not anything what I'm looking for. But I can see that I want the velocity of these guys to be way up because I want these things to be moving pretty fast. Turn my motion blur back on. And you can see that they're very hard to see now. Probably take the zoom up a little or the size even so I can see those a little more. Okay, zoom back out. That's probably too big. Oh, I cannot type. There we go. So now we've got, hopefully that's coming through pretty well. I've got motion blur turned on. Again, I can start messing around with velocity variation to get a better kind of feel where some of the snowflakes are moving faster than others. I can turn on motion randomness quite a bit so that some of those snowflakes are moving in a kind of a random, strange way. And then once that's all done, I hit apply and that's back into my project. I can even do, I just noticed that there is a larger snowflake up here. I might want to add this to add some, fake some depth in here of closer ones to the camera and play around with that a little bit. But you can see it's pretty quick to go ahead and come up with something that is a little bit fun and convincing. Yeah, that's not too bad. So apply that. It's back in my host. Yep. So that's just an example of how I can go ahead and dig into the emitter libraries, find a starting point that may not be exactly what I want, but quickly edit that and then make it fit my project a little better. I'm going to turn to a little bit more of the creative stuff here. I've got a project where I've got just a sort of a flying shot of a cool road on a mountain. And I have a good idea that I want to kind of give a little tech feel to this. And I'm going to show a use of particleIllusion that is, you would not consider particles. And this is one of the things that became pretty popular with particleIllusion because it does use images for all of the particles. It looks like After Effects is stealing some of my memory here, so things are slowing down a bit. But you'll see that there's a HUD UI library down here. This has got a bunch of effects that are kind of text-based and just kind of techy and got a lot of flashing numbers and things. Some of them are fairly basic with just counters and maybe dots and things. But once you start going down a little bit, you'll see there's, oops, I did not mean to double click that. There's really some great grids and lots of interesting waveforms and just readouts and things that are going on. And then there's even sort of pre-made sort of whole HUD elements here, where they're almost like a little motion graphics project in itself. And these are really complex. So they've got like indicators moving and numbers changing and all this kind of stuff. And so really kind of exciting if that's what you're looking for. And that's kind of the thing I'm looking for right now. Might just take something like this and just add this to my project. And hit playback. To make this go a little faster, show some of these options over here. I won't go into we've got all the standard playback options and things you need, but for previewing, you can composite over black, you can composite over checkerboard, you can composite over the video, but I can also composite over a single frame for my video. That's a little bit better performance than the video itself because it's not constantly asking the host for an image. But this lets me see what it looks like while it's blending in. So you can see this is pretty cool. It's got a lot of like indicators moving. It's got the little flashing. It's just very nice little element. And if I look here, you can see that the artist who created this, there's a separate controls for all these things. So this little fuel gauge or whatever, I know this guy's right here. I want to increase the fuel gauge size. I could do that. Positioning, I don't think I can really accurately position that, but the idea behind these types of emitters is not that you want to really customize it too much. It's more like you need something that's cool and it's pre-made, but at the same time, it's not a canned sequence. It's still generating all this stuff randomly. So it's really, really kind of a great solution. And then I can go ahead and I think I might want some pieces over here. So I'm going to go ahead and look for some more stuff. There's just really great great kind of barcode stuff and lots of really neat things with digits, but I want something that goes vertical. There's these great data spinners, but I want something like, okay, yeah, like that one's pretty good. So like I'm gonna add my readout, maybe make this a little bit bigger. And again, like I've got this going on, and okay, I like that, apply that. And there we go. We've got a great little tech display on my project, and I didn't even have to really build anything from scratch. There is some customization you can do like I showed you, but for the most part in this release, because you can't edit the sprites themselves, you're not going to be able to remake this. Like if you wanted this fuel gauge to be square, for instance, that's not anything you're going to be able to do in this release. So. But I just want to point out it's a great creative use of particleIllusion. So I want to show you something. If you have used particleIllusion in the past, besides the limited library situation, you also know that it had very rudimentary masking abilities. We had a thing called blockers, but they were almost laughable. Like they're not really useful for anything. You couldn't feather them. They weren't easily animated, things like that. There also was no motion tracker. But with particleIllusion being part of Continuum, has access to the Mocha tracker, which is built in to all of the Continuum plugins. So it's just expands what you can do with particleIllusion as far as tracking and masking just immensely. In this example, I have added a little smoke emitter, and if we go ahead and look at what this is, I've got a train that's going to come in down the track, and I wanted to just enhance the smoke a bit. So I have added just a little. Okay, there's the smoke emitter going there. Just a little puff, and it's actually just a slightly modified version of one of the existing smoke emitters. So I'm not going to mess with that, but the important thing to note is that I didn't animate the position of this anywhere. I just have the emitter just added to the center of the stage or wherever. Doesn't matter. I'm not animating that at all. What I am going to do, though, is go ahead, if we look at the transforms here, we have options of none, which means we're not going to be doing any sort of tracking. We have world, which means that the camera is moving in my shot, but the emitter will not be tracked. So we have emitter, which means the camera will not be moving, so it doesn't need to be tracked, but the emitter we do want to track. And then we've got world plus emitter, which means the camera is moving that we want to track, and the emitter is moving that we want to track. In this case, the camera is locked down, so I'm just going to use emitter. And then where I access this tracking is in the motion tracker / Mocha. So spin that open. You'll see the Mocha motion tracker. Oops, I forgot I had this set to half resolution. Open Mocha. There's a lot going on here. I'm gonna go ahead and show you that. Let's see, we're doing just the emitter, so we don't even need to see the world center. Take that off. The emitter has two things. It has the emitter offset, which I'm going to position at the where the smokestack is, or whatever it's called on a modern train. And then this is the, as it says here, emitter offset search area. So I'm going to just put that on an area here. Now Mocha is a planar tracker, so it really is not, it's not tracking pixels, it's tracking planes. So I'm going to go ahead and, the wall of that train is a plane that's going to track. And then I just go ahead and hit the track forward button, and it's going to go ahead and track that for me. I'm not going to let that finish because at any point you can see now that this is going to be covered up. I can also retrack or move my my search area anywhere I need to, and it doesn't change that data. So I can just restart the track down here because I can see that it's going to go behind these poles and things, and it's not going to be able to track anymore. So I can keep moving that if I want. The other thing I notice here is that the emitter is here. The smoke trail is going to be coming. Whoops, the smoke trail is going to be coming off this way, and this pole is here. And we want the smoke to appear to go behind that. Well, the nice thing about Mocha is not only does it do the tracking, but it does masking as well. So I can draw a mask using many different ways. I'm just going to do a simple one here and just draw a rectangle, and then I can go ahead and edit those points just to kind of hit this pole, cover it, continue tracking. I guess I don't really need to track the mask because the camera's not moving. But that's what gives me my mask. And then when I'm ready to go, I can hit save and then just close this. And then back in particleIllusion, you can see right away, even though I tracked a little bit, the emitter now is with the smokestack and moving forward as it goes. And then as I pull forward, you can see the particles are behind the pole because I masked that out. So it's just such a great tool. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on this because we've got tons of tutorials on using Mocha on the Boris Effects site and for Mocha Pro. But this is a feature that most, if not all, of the Continuum filters have access to in particleIllusion. It just makes it so much nicer for so many situations. I've got another example where masking would be great. I wanted to add something in the sky behind these buildings. So I can add particleIllusion. I'm going to go ahead and transforms again. I'm going to use world only because the camera moves in this shot. The camera is moving, the emitter will not be. And then I can go back into Mocha. Okay, I did it again. Go into Mocha, and then I actually could draw the mask for the whole thing, but I've already got it pre-made, so I'm just going to load that up real quick. Oops, I have to load the right project. Don't say what I just had. So now I've got my mask. The world camera is marked here. I've already tracked it so that it's following, so my mask follows the shot. I can go ahead and save that, close. And now if I launch particleIllusion to add an effect, I don't have to worry about the masking because it's all set up already. And it looks like a not only is After Effects eating my memory, Mocha was too. There we go. I know this is one of my favorite effects. This is kind of a cool nebula, sort of space warp effect. I'm going to just add this somewhere here in the back. I'm going to make that into a line, and then maybe reposition this a little bit, and maybe that just happened. Oh, I dragged, and I'm going to zoom it up a little bit just so I can see a little better, and I'm just gonna apply that. So I've got my masking already. I set that up already, but you'll see right away that you might be wondering, why is it not masking? Well, it's because the Pixel Chooser Mocha, I have pixel choosing turned off. I want to turn that on, and I'm not sure why it didn't update. Oh, there we go. And I want to invert the mask. And now we've got that. We've got mask feathering we can set a little bit on here. And it's just a fantastic way to get tracked masks into your project. I want to point out one other thing here real quick. Getting a little low on time, and I have a few more examples I want to briefly show you, but compositing. If you've used particleIllusion in the past, you know that the workflow was to save with an alpha channel and then load that in your host, and then sometimes try to deal with the fringing, the black fringing that would be available because of the way particles mix together. Here we've got a direct classic as the default. That just means that it's rendering the particles right on top of the background as it did in particleIllusion. So that's one way to get kind of a clean alpha channel out of it. But you probably, I would suggest trying the alpha and apply modes. Once that's applied, now you have a whole selection of different application transfer modes that are available: screen, multiply, etc. And then some of these are really kind of nice. And then you have the way to mix that so that it mixes with normal compositing to kind of get a wide range of different looks. And then you can also even adjust the opacity here. Lots of other things you can do. I can offset the entire effect, so I don't have to go back into particleIllusion to move it. I can scale it up in here. Just so many things I can do with these transforms here. Just so powerful to make your effects not only integrate into your shots better, but just work with them a lot easier. Just really, really great. If you have not used Mocha before, it's not that it's really not too intimidating. It starts out in this Essentials workspace, which takes away a lot of the tools that you might not need right away. I like using the Essentials because it is easier for me to find things. You can switch back to Classic if you're familiar with Mocha from before, or you can there's a few other settings as well, but I like the Essentials workspace. It kind of focuses me on what I'm doing. So don't let Mocha scare you off. It's quite easy to use. And like I said, we have lots of tutorials on that on the website. All right, I want to look at a couple of motion graphics examples that was put together by Ben Brownlee of Curious Turtle. He sent me a few examples. He's been using particleIllusion for a little while now. He's been testing for us and also just using it in his work. And so he put together a few examples. I'm going to let this play through. I'm not sure what sort of playback speed you guys are going to see. I'm going to scrub through it so you can see it a little more slowly to see what's going on here. Using particleIllusion all over the place here. All of this stuff you see here is just straight particleIllusion and text, and there's nothing else going on. So it's really quite amazing. In this example, he just used one of the preset backgrounds and then kind of tweaked it a little bit. Really pretty nice. In this case, he's got several emitters he's pouring the particles out of the bottle. You'll see the text itself is using particles as a matte, or vice versa, and then he's got particles exploding off of the text itself. And I did not get into this detail of particleIllusion, but one of the color options, if I switch back over, one of the color options, if I go to basics, I showed you can use the full gradient. You can randomize the color gradient. There is also an option for color from layer. And that's a more advanced option, but it will actually pull the particle color from the layer, and same thing for alpha. You can pull the alpha from the layer, and that way I could actually have, he could actually have used particleIllusion to break apart those text samples and other cool stuff like that. But there'll be lots of tutorials coming on that sort of thing, because that's a little bit more advanced. But just wanted to show you these examples of some great motion graphic stuff that Ben gave us from Curious Turtle. So I think that's all I have right now. Do we have any questions that people need answered, Peter?
Hey, Alan. Sure. I wonder if, Jesse, do you want to go into anything before we dig into
yes.
questions?
Hi, everyone. I just want to quickly mention the raffle winners. Congratulations to the 5 Action VFX $200 gift certificate winners. Congratulations to Cindy Kelly, Art Abbott, Carlos Jose Bonti, Sandra Took, and Donrick Pond. You've each won $200 to Action VFX, and you'll be receiving emails from me with information. Congratulations also to Gustavo Bonfietti, who has won the Continuum 1-year subscription. Congratulations to Pollyanna Hardwick Brown, who has won the 1-year Sapphire subscription. And congratulations to TJ Hemingway, who has won the 1-year Mocha Pro subscription. Before I go back to Peter, I just want to quickly mention that a lot of people have been asking if the webinar will be available on our website. And yes, it'll be on our website within a day or two.
Great. Lucky winners. Huh. Well, thanks, Jesse. And Alan, great presentation before we move on to questions. Really, I hope everybody learned a lot from your deep knowledge on this product, founder. Some questions. I got a lot of questions that I answered in the background while you were busy charming everybody. And let's see, one of them, well, let's see, the very first one I'd ask you to do is if you can go under your Apple pull-down menu and show people what kind of a computer you're working on. That was the question that came up. So you're on Mac OS High Sierra. Although it does work on Mojave just as well as High Sierra. We fully support the latest operating systems in Windows and Macintosh land. So as we see, you've got a Retina 4K display on that, so supporting 4K monitors. And you've got, what, 16 gigs of RAM there.
Mm-hmm.
Decent system. And you're getting some pretty good performance out of that.
Yeah, it's not the highest end system. Never, they don't let me have the best system, but yeah.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Well,
remember, the particleIllusion engine itself was written back almost 20 years ago now, and it was written using OpenGL, so it doesn't rely on CUDA or OpenCL or anything. So it works on any modern graphics card with acceleration, and so it was written on systems that were, I don't even know what the factor is, so much less powerful than today's system. So. The particle effects themselves are not going to be dragging you down. Of course, you can always do it. I mean, it's easy to go ahead and create, 150,000 particles and have your system kind of slow down a bit because you cranked something up too high. But yeah, you might be surprised at how quick it is.
And Alan, the obvious lead on from that is, I don't know if you mentioned it already because I was kind of busy typing away, but up at the very top, right above the stage window, you'll notice that there is an option called particles. And this lists how many particles are currently being blitted to your screen.
Yep.
Very handy. So sometimes if you're working with a massive amount of emitters, or even this piece that Alan just dropped up on the screen right there, you'll notice that the particle count will quickly increase to, not just from tens to hundreds, but also thousands and tens of thousands. And as you do so, just remember that each one of those tens of thousands is an image being popped onto the screen and processed. So there's an enormous amount of work being done there under the hood. And because of the power of GPU processing, we're able to deliver, fairly close to real-time previews on this stuff, and especially in the preview window on the left. I mean, you can just like drag in there to your heart's content, and it shouldn't really slow down at all. But yeah, so some other questions. Let's see. Is it the same interface for Avid? Yes, it's the same interface for every single supported host, and that includes all hosts that are supported with the Continuum 2019 package, which of course means the usual Avid and Adobe, but we also support hosts such as Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve and many others. So I mean, if somebody out there was working with a system and they weren't currently seeing supported, and all they need to do is contact us to see if this would be possible to support. And if it is, then we would try to do it. So AE, AVX, and many OFX hosts are supported with particleIllusion. Can you sync the behavior of particles to sounds like music? Well, as we all know, there's a thing called the beat reactor inside of Continuum, which enables that function, that feature. So you can bring in an audio track and have particles such as those in the particle emitter 3D or particle array 3D or some of the other particle systems that ship with Continuum. They can be synced to audio. Is that in particleIllusion just yet? Nope. But it's on the cards. We've discussed it, and hopefully that's something which will be coming down the line in the not too distant future. And speaking of things,
it would show up down here, right? A beat reactor would be another kind of option below Pixel Chooser.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It'd be right down there, and you could just load in the audio source from disk, and then just like synchronize particle, like maybe like the scaling or with the amount or the zoom, functions like that. You could link into the effect. And additionally, I mean, we do expose some parameters. If let's see, we expose some transform parameters inside the After Effects timeline, and other control panels if you go into the transforms mode. So when that's exposed, I mean, especially in After Effects, the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have a standalone beat reactor filter. And the standalone beat reactor filter, which is in the Continuum 2019 product, can then be used to drive, to use audio to drive any of the transform parameters that are visible inside of the AE timeline. So in essence, you could do that today. It's just not integrated directly into the particleIllusion user interface.
Yeah, so for instance, you could have the scale beat, pulse to the beat, or another thing that is not always apparent is that we have the emitter offset here. You don't need to actually track it with Mocha. Once this emitter offset is available, now it's available to use with After Effects and other hosts who can reference other parameters. It's available. So yeah, you don't have access to every parameter. Again, we're not exposing all the internal particleIllusion parameters for their emitters, but you still have there's still some stuff to work with as far as scaling and positioning and things like that.
Yep. Oh, very cool. Another quick question was somebody came by and asked, are we able to import Mocha data from other instances of Mocha? So that could be maybe using a Sapphire effect, which has integrated Mocha in it, and that integrated Mocha can be used to export it, say, user-generated mask shapes, and then these could be imported or merged back into the Mocha, which is inside of particleIllusion. Or you can use Mocha Pro track and then import that tracking data and use that inside of here too. Forces, Alan, forces. That's something we're working on. Why don't we talk about forces for a minute?
Yeah, so forces, if you're familiar with particleIllusion 3, forces were external sort of objects that could influence the particles after they were born. Forces are not in this release. This is the 12.01 update. But they are in process, so they are coming in an update in the future.
Yes, and we also had a question about blockers, and blockers, of course, have been replaced with Mocha. So Mocha greatly expands upon what could be done in the past with blockers in PI3. And
now, someone might be thinking of deflectors.
Yeah,
Blockers and
too.
deflectors were the names sometimes got confused for people, but deflectors were the things that particles could collide with and bounce off of. It's also not in this release, but also as with forces, it's in the works.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all the time that we have for today. Thank everybody for attending. I hope you learned a lot from it. I always learn from watching it.
Yeah, and I also want to point out, if anybody's got a question that they didn't feel comfortable asking, or they think about something, after we're done with the webinar and have a question, feel free to email me directly. It's Alan, ALAN, at borisfx.com. I will be glad to answer your questions.
And ditto from my end, Peter M at borisfx.com. That's PETER letter M at borisfx.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on Continuum or particleIllusion also.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Okay, bye.